Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center. And for more than 20 years, I've been working with accounting professionals to help them start and build successful businesses, offering quality accounting services, and most importantly, getting paid what they're worth. Each week, we have on the show guests, experts in their own right as to things that they can be helping us do to work on our business and provide these quality accounting services. And today's going to be no exception. What I have is someone that I'm excited to meet with. We're going to kind of go a little bit off topic, and I'm sure you're going to see value in this. It's Roxanne Thayne. Roxanne happens to be someone that I learned of a number of months ago and basically tried to get her on the show, and she's basically accepted, and we're happy to have her here. She is someone that I'm sure you're going to find very intriguing, as she is a spouse and more or less founder of a business, and more importantly, has some perspectives as it relates to running companies and actually being successful in business. So Roxanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roger. I'm so tickled to be on this. This is very outside of my comfort zone, as I've been working in the troubled teen industry for the last 15 years, but I'm excited to share my personal experience in working in family business, being an entrepreneur myself.
Yeah, so I think that's the perspective that we're wanting to have today. A lot of the conversations I'm having with business owners, whether they're the accounting professionals who are running their own companies or the clients with whom they are working, oftentimes as we're running our businesses, we run into issues as it relates to the family dynamic and how it impacts the successes we're experiencing. And we're going to kind of dive into all of that today because your perspective and insights, both personal and professional, are going to be, I think, very intriguing today. So let's first of all start with the family side of the dynamic. You and your husband started a business, and I'm curious, whose idea was it? Was it yours, his? Who came up with the idea?
You know, we've had a lot of experiences together, and I really think it goes back to the time we were dating when we met on the ballroom dance team. So we literally had to learn to work together from the moment we met, where he turned to me and said, "Would you like to dance?" We were immediately working in close proximity, stepping on each other's toes, trying to figure it out. And so we went through all of his schooling to get his PhD in marriage and family therapy. And I was supporting all the time, you know, doing whatever jobs I could, transcribing interviews, whatever I could to make money. And then when we finally got to the point where we started the company that we just sold, it was called Homeward Bound. That was really his idea. He really had the vision that I didn't have. I grew up in a professor's home, 9 to 5 summers off. It was perfect. But he just couldn't teach. He really had this entrepreneurial spirit where he just wanted to do more and he wanted to change things and make it work better. And tackling the home environment is a big, scary thing to tackle because it's nice when you're in a therapy office and you can control the environment and you just kind of hear what happened and give some tools for going further. And I'm not dishing on anybody who's a therapist. We love therapists. My husband is a therapist, but he really wanted to get into the thick of it in home and look at the family system and what was going on and how we could help families function better. That's really our mission. So I had been there all along the way, but only really officially getting, quote, paid for my great ideas since 2009. So about 15 years now.
Okay. Now, I'm going to put some context to this.
Please.
Oftentimes when I'm working with my business clients, and many of them are the owners of accounting firms, the business clients, as we're working on the company, we find that there's things going on outside of the business that are impacting their ability to focus on the company, to work in the company. They're distracted from maybe family relationships, spousal relationships, dynamics that are basically things that you wouldn't consider to be business, but they're impacting their ability to work on the business. So here your husband comes home, starts this business. You're asked to be supportive. You jump in. Hey, I'll support you in any way that I can. You're helping with the marketing. I want to just talk about the dynamic of the spousal relationship.
Yeah.
Let's start there. How was it for you to actually, kind of take those risks with your spouse? They have this dream. You're trying to support them. Talk about that for a minute.
Okay, well, I've said I have grown a stomach of steel. I had to grow it because it was not innate in me. Because I really just thought, I'm just going to sit at home with the kiddies and you go do your thing. But when it's your nest egg that is being put into that thing, it's your husband's education or whatever it is, you're invested. You don't want to see your kids go hungry. So you step up and do what you can do. And there was one day in the kitchen where I said, my degree's in secondary ed history. I don't know that I really want to teach for $25,000 a year. What would happen to me if something happened to you? And he says, what you'd be good at is marketing. And I thought, ooh, gross. That's slimy. He's like, do you even know what marketing is? And I'm like, well, maybe I don't. Maybe you should tell me. And he says, whenever you're excited about something, Roxanne, people follow you. He says, do you believe in what we're doing? I'm like, heck yes, I do. I helped you come up with the idea. He says, do you think you could write about it? Do you think you could tell people honestly how you feel about it? And I said, of course. And he says, well, then can you start? So it was just, can you help a little here and there?
Yep.
And then pretty soon, boom, I was full blown into it. But I have to say, one of the pros of working in a family business is the patience that they usually have with you as you get up to speed. I had done nothing with business and marketing. I was a high school history teacher, but I knew how to read. I knew what looked good. I could pick things out that needed to be better. I mean, he would bring things home. I knew what needed to be fixed in the culture of the company. And so I became the guardian of our brand. I wasn't just the marketer. And then it grew from there to helping him write his book, which has been the best thing we've ever done for our business, was writing a book. So anyway, it goes on.
Yeah. Now that stomach of steel that you mentioned earlier,
yes.
What strains did it bring into the relationship as you at first were starting the business? I'm sure that you were outside of your comfort zone as you were trying to support and so forth. But a lot of the clients that I'm working with, the spouses, they don't typically have the skill sets, the ability to come in and really do the business, but they're willing to help with the business. But it causes strains because there's clearly this growth period that occurs in the business, and there's stresses. You're leveraging maybe your mortgage on your home. You hear the stories about second mortgages. You hear about months going without paychecks. Do you have anything to share on that?
Years going without paychecks.
Yeah.
I mean, we really did. Yeah, I think that one of the big cons, I would say, of working together is that all of your eggs are in one basket.
Yeah.
And that is a very scary place to be. But if I can give one of my tips right here for working in the family business is always look at the worst case scenario. And that is what got me through. I would always say, will my kids ever go without shoes? Will they ever go hungry? Will we ever have no roof over our head? And we looked around to friends and family and we said, no, we're going to be okay. So we were able to keep going and keep taking those risks because we knew the fallback, that my husband could just go get a job at a local clinic and be a therapist, and he could bring home enough money to pay for the rent. And we didn't have to go worldwide. We didn't have to go huge. And so that is a really great mindset, I think, to have, is just, you don't have to look at the glass half empty all the time, but you just have to be realistic.
Yeah, it's not going to be as bad as perhaps you may think it could be.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
okay, good. And this dynamic, obviously at the spousal level, that's one thing, but how did it impact you raising the children? How were the children impacted through this?
There were moments where I would tell myself, it is not fair that I have girlfriends that go to lunch every day and do their nails, and why do I have to work? This shouldn't be. And I've often looked back at my ancestors' lives, and it's given me a lot of strength. And I've thought, how many of my ancestors didn't have to work? I mean, those kids were 3-year-olds were babysitting the 1-year-old so the mom could take the laundry down to the creek to wash it. And she was out there helping with the animals and with the farm. I mean, it really helped me kind of put it into perspective, like, this is life. You help one another and you both invest in the family. And then our kids were raised going, oh, mom and dad are busy. And fortunately, I was always able to work from home. So I was always available. But I had to put my kids in school where I'd been homeschooling them up until that time. That was a heartbreak for me. But then there was just a lot of little miracles that came about that made me feel like, you know what? I think that we're going to be supported in this. I think this is the right thing for the family. And it really did turn out to it. And now all of my kids, all of them are entrepreneurs. And some of them haven't gone to school, which frustrates the heck out of me. But they're making more money than I am. And they're happy doing what they're doing. So it's a different world. It really is.
Truly is, truly is. So that actually brings up one of the points that I wanted to ask. And as I've worked with my clients, I've typically asked this question is, what do you feel your children have learned having been raised in this entrepreneurial household? What has it given them the ability to do? And clearly, you've already said many of them are out there doing their own thing at this point, and they are being successful. But what did they learn as they watched you, your husband, building the business, how it impacted them? What lessons did they take from all of this?
Well, I think, it's been really gratifying to sit with them and have them thank us for the things that they learned. I mean, of course, they started by cleaning the office space, which is us helping clean the toilets with them.
Uh-huh.
And then they've moved on to where they're doing our video production. They're doing our podcast production. They're doing our graphic design. They're doing our accounting. They're doing the headshots of our employees. I mean, they really have been working in there. And then they sit around the dinner table with us and we talk shop all the time. And it's really fun. Some families get to talk about, their skiing and others about their farming. And we're talking about marketing
Yeah.
and how we can build each other's businesses. I think that what's been most helpful for them is they've kind of looked at this and thought, this is the kind of family life I want. There is no such thing as no stress in life. You can't just say, I'm going to just be an employee so I don't have the stress of business ownership. And you can't say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur so I don't have the stress of working for the man. There's stress on either side, and they've just been able to choose. I think I want to choose the flexibility of driving my own ship here. And so I think that they just have a very realistic view of the highs and the lows, and that it takes a lot longer to get to the high than you think it's going to.
Yeah, it always takes longer. Yeah, that's very, very true. There are those surprises, but it does take longer. So one of the things that I can relate to is I have 3 children, and of the 3 children, my youngest daughter, she's literally, I think she's 21 now. But the point is she, right out of high school, she got her cosmetology license and simultaneously purchased a salon. She owns a salon, runs a salon, is very successful with her salon. My oldest daughter, she started with her cousin a boutique company selling clothing and so forth, and did that for a number of years. And it's interesting, these things that as a parent, while you're living your life, going about your routine, you don't know what's rubbing off on the children.
Right.
You don't know what they're noticing and learning from, because some of these things are just, in passing, that you're maybe at the dinner table having a conversation about something, but clearly this is impacting them. And at most, I hope that they actually found that they can do what they want to do. If I inspired them to at least have the confidence to go out there and do whatever they choose to do, how empowering is that to know that, mom and dad showed that I can, pursue my dreams and I can do whatever I want to, and it's up to me. And so that's powerful, I believe.
You reminded me of something. One of my favorite books that I read on sales, I believe it is Daniel Pink's To Sell Is Human. Have you ever read that book?
I've not.
It's fantastic. But there's a chapter in there where he talks about grit and buoyancy.
Okay.
And that is what salesmen need. And of course, we are all in sales. We all understand that if you're trying to get your kid to eat their dinner, you're selling it to them.
Yes.
If you're trying to bring in a new employee, you're selling them on your business.
Yes.
But grit and buoyancy are 2 things that I think that entrepreneurs can give their children. Those 2 characteristics of being able to find the grit to keep going when everything looks like it's lost. You're going to look for another open door, another
Yes.
way. It's up, over, under, however you're going to get there, you're going to get there. And then the buoyancy that when you get pushed down or that wave breaks over you, that you can pop back up and keep going. And I would say that in our spousal relationship, my husband and I, he is the grit and I am the buoyancy. And I have to understand that I am a cheerleader. And that's not just rah-rah pom-poms, but I've actually come up with a word. It's called cheership. I'm a cheerleader and I'm leading out too. So I'm a cheerleadershipper, if that makes sense. But you have to take turns. There are going to be times where something very personal happens to your spouse and they're down. And you have to say, we're going to make it. This is going to work.
I believe in you.
Yes, I believe in you. And I believe in the vision that you had just last week. And I'm going to hold that up for you to help bring you back up on top of this wave that just took you down.
I have to agree with that, because in my parenting, I don't know if my children would confirm this, but I doubt they'll deny it. But my intent, at least in my parenting style, was to not always say no. My hope was, look, if you wanted a cell phone, you can have a cell phone. I'm just not going to pay for it. So if you want it, figure out a way to pay for it. So all these things that they're pursuing and wanting, whether it was clothing or activities, it wasn't to say, no, you can't. And as a household, we can't afford to. It was, that's great that you want to. How are you going to achieve it? And that's one of the things that I think is very motivating, because then it's up to them and they realize, okay, here's what I'm going to have to sacrifice or do to make this possible. It's not just mom and dad coming up with the check or whatever it was as the means to achieve what they wanted. And I wouldn't want to say that I was perfect at that, but I believe that they found within themselves the tenacity to get what they want. And that's very important, I feel.
I think that it's such a great thing that you were so self-aware that you knew that you were teaching these little young'uns coming up that this was going to be life for them.
Yeah.
And that you would do the research for them, or you would help them with the research. You would provide the jobs they could earn the money from, or whatever it took, but that you were going to help them be self-sufficient. You were setting them up for that success early on. And it shows if they're out there already at 21 running their own business. It's pretty exciting. And not every family can run that way.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There are people who want the quiet, easy
Of course.
lifestyle. And I often just long for it.
Yes, yes.
We have a friend who has just had such a simple, quiet life. And I think, why are we trying to change the world? Why can't we just go to work 9 to 5? But some people aren't built that way.
Correct.
And you just have to, grow into it. And I have to say, I've often said, like told you earlier, I wish that I could just sit at home and, go to lunch with my girlfriends all day long. But I have to give great credit to my husband for seeing something in me that I could do and building these talents and skills in me, because I've been able to take it and not just use it in our company together that we're in now, but I've also been able to launch my own publishing company, because that is what I care about, is history, family, and personal history. And I help other people produce bookstore-worthy books. I don't want it just to have your most beautiful life legacy just, spiral bound at a local copy center. It needs to be gorgeous or no one's going to pick it up. I'm in marketing. I know. You have to sell your family on their family history. And anyway, I could go on for a long time about that. I'll shush.
Well, let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
I want to go back to teenagers, because I know that's one of the things that you have a good deal of familiarity with as it relates to struggling teenagers, troubled teens. How does, in the experiences you've had and what you've witnessed, how does being an entrepreneurial family, impact raising these children, the stresses that it can put on them, the neglect that sometimes they experience as somebody puts so much energy and effort into the business, and the family perhaps is put to the wayside? What can you speak to on that?
Well, that's a reality. Absolutely. You nailed that, because whether parents have careers outside of each other or they're in a family business, there's a lot of distraction. And to live a certain lifestyle, it takes 2 incomes often. And there is a lot of stress. Parents come home, they're not ready to just sit and listen. They've got to get dinner on, they've got to get the kids' homework done, they've got to make sure that, the bills are paid and all those things that they didn't get those extra 8 hours to do like a stay-at-home parent would. And so there is that extra stress. And you have to, I think, be very flexible with one another. Sometimes dad is going to be the better cook. Let him handle that. Sometimes mom's going to be the one that's going to research and talk to the school counselor, or find the doctor that they need to go to, or take them to therapy, or whatever it takes. But you're going to have to be flexible on who can do those roles, and talk about that. If you are really communicative, if you are very proactive, you're going to be okay, because you're going to say, hey, you need a mental health day, honey? You take it. I'm going to still work. Don't feel guilty that I'm still at work. But the family needs you. And I think that was one of the reasons Tim and I were successful at this, is because he told me the family will always come first. You are always number 1, the mother; number 2, the marketer.
Fascinating. I like that. Now, that perspective, do you think the children felt that? Do you feel that they saw that? And perhaps not in your own family, but what advice would you have for the listeners as they're raising their families on how they can avoid neglecting their children, especially in that vulnerable teenage year?
I'm glad you asked that question. As I think about it, there needs to be some flexibility in who handles what with the teens at different times. I think that communication is massive. As long as you continue to talk, you're going to find a way to get through this mental health crisis or whatever it is. One of the tips that I would give parents who are working together is the idea of a mental health day. And a lot of companies are doing that nowadays. It doesn't need to be a sick day. You can take a mental health day. And if your kid needs a mental health day, take it with them. Go with them, do what they need to do, because sometimes they can't handle the pressure of 5 days a week of school. I mean, that is a very stressful place for them to be as well, just like it is for you at work, because they have constant deadlines. They have constant competition with peers. It's really tough. And so if they need some time off, take it and do not feel guilty. Make that a part of your business plan, that I'm not going to feel guilty when my family needs me. And my husband has always said, you're the mom first and the marketer second. And that has given me a lot of freedom and movement. And we're not perfect at it, Roger, obviously.
Yeah.
That there are times where the kids had cereal 3 nights that week for dinner, or there was a kid who needed therapy because maybe we didn't catch something soon enough, and we really should have been more aware, but we were distracted. But I think that just telling them, the kids, like, we know we're busy, we're sorry, we wish we could be here 24/7. But is there something I can do for you now? And I think another really wonderful thing has been my kids coming back saying, Mom, we never felt neglected. We knew that you would stop and turn.
Yeah.
But they also know that there were many times that I was like, yeah, okay, great. Like, I'm trying to listen, but I have to get this done.
That's right.
So it's a give and take. They, I'm sure, would have liked some things, but they also, my youngest, I mean, this kid can cook so many things because I wasn't cooking by the 5th kid. I was like, I'm sorry, can you just find something yourself? And so he was leaving home and I said, can I teach you how to make? And he's like, well, I can make this. And he had like 15 meals. And I thought, okay, you are better prepared than I was for marriage.
That's awesome. So I'm going to add to this conversation. There are a few things, and I'm curious your perspective or insights on this. I'm going to share 3 things that I felt are very important and helpful, and I've shared these with my business clients, and I've kind of emphasized this with them. The first begins with a quote that I'm assuming you may know: "No success can compensate for failure in the home." And that one I think is very important because you mentioned family first. I'm very much a family first person. I for lack of a better term, I've drilled this into my children. Family first. Whatever we can do, we try and put family first. Is that to say that I wasn't there at times that were important in their lives? Of course, business had its purpose, and I did have other distractions, but I don't feel that my children felt neglected, and that's very important, that they feel that they are still the center of attention. The second thing that I would throw into this is, I'm sure you're familiar with the love languages. Knowing what your children individually need to keep their buckets full, to feel valued, self-worth, that they are enough, that they can have confidence. Whatever I can do to fill that bucket and do my part to make sure that they are happy and feel as if they can go out and conquer the world, I'm very attentive to that. And so I want my children to know that I'm there to fill those bucket needs. And so my oldest daughter, hers happens to be quality time. She wants that individual attention. And so whenever I'm with her, I want to give her that undivided attention. My son, he happens to be words of affirmation. I want to just fill his bucket full of, you're doing great, you're wonderful, you look wonderful today, that was awesome, you did amazing. I'm just trying to always fill that with him. And then my youngest daughter happens to be gifts. She really, she wants to know she was thought of, that you were thinking of her. And if you can bring to her something that attests that you were, she was on your mind and that this thought or this thing made you think of her and you brought it to her, she collects things like no other. I mean, she has stuffed animals galore and everything else. Why? Because physical things are testaments to the love that someone else had for her. And she just loves these things. So understanding that, I was able to more easily fill their buckets, and I was able to be purposeful in filling their buckets.
I think, Roger, that's fantastic. I'm so grateful that you were able to go through the 5 different ones. And of course, we all want all of those. We want the words of affirmation and all of the physical affection, all of that.
Yes.
But what's so exciting about that is that you were self-aware and you were very intentional.
Yes.
And when a parent can be intentional, they're going to succeed because they are watching, and they know that parenting is not just a free-for-all, like whatever my parents did, I guess I'll do. They're actually learning and they're growing on it. Because I'm sure you didn't know what a love language was before you became a parent.
No, I didn't. I learned this years into being a parent,
right.
And it revolutionized my relationship with my spouse, my children, my employees, people in my life, because I became aware of what their needs were, and I was more purposeful. I was more intentional about how I interacted with them. That's powerful because I was more effective in my ability to share with them my love and admiration for them.
That's right. I'm glad you brought up love languages because there's a book, and it's the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace.
Yes,
Have you read that?
Yes, it's a companion book.
Such a great book, yes. If I can share one of my most
Please.
powerful experiences in working with my husband. It just happened last year. We had this company for 18 years. It was called Homeward Bound, and we would send our therapists around the country into the homes of families who had teens returning from treatment programs, whether it was because of addiction or they were on the spectrum or whatever their issues were, anxiety, depression. They were coming home from a very structured environment to a very loose environment because no family can replicate the structure of a treatment program where you're bringing in fresh staff every 8 hours. to
Yeah.
keep the rules and help these kids grow and mature and become clean or gain the skills they need. So we had been doing this for 18 years, and we had just gotten through COVID, and we hadn't had our team all come together for 3 years. And we had them come, and we rented this massive cabin for 3 days, and we were able to eat together and to train and to hand out swag and to do recognitions with trophies and clapping and just present new things. But my favorite part was when we all went out into the garage and we packed up the backpacks that we would send out to our families when we would be working with them, that had all of the different tools that they would need. And we were standing shoulder to shoulder with the therapists, the leadership team and the clinical team. We were standing shoulder to shoulder, packing these backpacks, laughing and talking and learning things about each other that we had never known, and we'd worked together for years.
Yeah.
And then our families locally came, children and grandchildren, and everybody came for a big dinner that night. And I had this moment where I could just sit back and look at my work family and my home family and look at what we had created, and it was beautiful. Like the love was flowing, the appreciation for each other was flowing. It was a highlight that got us it was payback for all of those times where we thought, are we going to make payroll?
Yeah.
Is this going to work? How's this going to work? We thought we were going to be huge, and we're eking it out every month, And it was a really joyous experience. And I think that it helped me understand that, you know what, you're maybe not going to be just fabulously wealthy or change the whole world, but you can change your corner of the world.
I love that story. I appreciate you sharing that, because so many of my listeners are like you, trying to eke by, trying to get by. They're working with clients that are also struggling. And clearly there's a lot of successes out there. But when you can identify the pinnacles of those types of things, such as that dinner where you see your work family and your personal family coming together, and they're all benefactors of everyone's efforts, they're all collaborating, and we're able to smile and laugh and have this joyous experience together, that right there in so many ways is the culmination of all that whole hard work. It's perhaps not the money,
No,
but it definitely is those relationships.
absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. That was very special. Okay, so I want to share my third thing, because I said there were three, and I
Right.
want to share my third thing. But then I want to come back to these programs, because I'm curious your perspective on like the wilderness programs and so forth. All right, so my third thing, and this was powerful. I learned this before I was married, and I'd done this when I was a teenager. So I've had this one for a long time. I learned years and years ago that one of the most valuable things that a person has is their name. And the most valuable thing that they want to hear is their name.
Mhm.
And once you understand that, you start to be able to get people's attention and appreciation quicker when you just recognize them as an individual. So my point is with teenagers, I was taught you need to acknowledge when a teenager comes into a room, and you need to acknowledge when they leave, and you need to acknowledge their friends. And I've been in so many situations, especially in familiar settings, where the family, somebody's on the couch, the teenager walks in the room, no acknowledgement. They just watch the television or whatever else. They leave the room, no acknowledgement. They just walk out the front door. Friends come over, no acknowledgement of the friends. They're passing in the wind. They're not acknowledging one another's existence. If you could just simply say, hi, Tom, hi, Sally, and when the friends come over, who's this? Hi, Jim, happy to have you in my home. I'm glad you're here. If you can just acknowledge them, you can get so much out of that just simple use of their name. This is your own children, by the way, your children and their friends, that when they come into the household, they're acknowledged, their presence is validated, and you basically are pausing whatever you're doing and you're acknowledging their presence, and then doing that with their friends. I have seen so much come of that, and it's a trick. I'm honest. I'm going to say it's a trick. It's a trick I have used for most of my life, because I learned it when I was a teenager, and it's got me through so many things where people feel acknowledged and appreciated, where in no other setting, other households or whatever else does that happen. And then all of a sudden you become in the community one of those homes where everyone gravitates, because by golly, I go there and I'm acknowledged, I'm appreciated, I'm recognized. Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I just want to take it up a level. With
Yeah.
social media, you can continue to do that. Even if they're not in your home, they can do that for you because you can do that for others because you can comment on everything they post. Even if you don't agree with what they're doing, you can say, you're crazy, but I still love you, and put an emoji on there.
Yeah.
Just make it fun. And then, and this really works because what you said, my daughter, we were going through, she got married a couple of months ago, and we were going through the list of who did we want to invite to a bridal shower
yeah, of course.
in the neighborhood. And she says, well, let's invite Darlene because she always comments on everything I post.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And I thought, I didn't even know you knew her. But obviously this woman was continuing to nurture her and mentor her just by her cheership. Let me just keep cheering you on, whatever you're doing, kid.
Yes.
And so I think that that's a really important thing. It's a public way of acknowledging them and valuing what they are doing in their lives.
Yep. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so I want to go back. You mentioned these programs. I'm familiar with the wilderness programs here in Utah. They're very, very popular.
Yeah.
A lot of people send their children, and they'll do extractions, bring them here. I mean, it's an interesting business model, and there's quite a few of them in the area. I've known people that are on the extraction teams. I've known people that are involved in the therapy, and I've actually met some of the individuals who've gone through the programs.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, do you have an opinion on these?
Absolutely. I think that there, of course, there are bad actors out there in every industry, but they have been a real wonderful option for so many families because this is a complex world. And our kids are struggling hard because they have drugs, they have social media, they have a lot of competition for school, they have just the bad food that we eat, the lack of exercise. I mean, all of that can contribute to a lot of mental health issues. And sometimes you need to be removed from the situation to get a clear head, to detox, to be able to look for what your strengths are. Maybe they've never even been tested. And you need to get out there and go, wow, I can cook my own meal. I can build a fire. I can survive in the wilderness. I can go back and make it through my ACT.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I think that there are a lot of benefits that come from it. And then you've got kids who say it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and kids who say I will hate my parents forever for it.
Yeah.
But you know what? You get that either way.
Yeah.
And some parents do it because they are trying to save their kid's life. They have already tried reading a book on parenting. They've already tried weekly therapy. They've already tried what they can do. And they're finally to this. It is a costly experience, but it has really proven to be a lifesaver for many families.
Yeah, the intervention stories I've heard of are quite interesting. So very good. All right, so I want to kind of wrap this up because my intent of having you on the show was literally to dive into this family dynamic and the experiences you had as a spouse supporting basically this spouse that had a dream and wanted to do it. And clearly you had that wonderful experience at the cabin with the business family, the work family, and the family coming together. A lot of those things are great. But I know of something that you did that I wanted to just kind of end on, which is a letter you wrote to your daughter just recently when she was getting married. This 4-page letter that you wrote. Perhaps you can't remember all the details, but what are some of the insights that you shared with your daughter as she was beginning this new chapter of her life, getting married, that you felt she needed to know?
Well, it was 4 pages long, Roger, so there was a lot I could tell you. But I think that the reason I did it is my father was a history professor, and he wrote me a letter the month that I got married 32 years ago and said, you're going to be married for a long time, and I'm so thrilled for you, but I just want to give you a little advice. That has become my personal scripture to read that. It has, I can't even tell you how much it's influenced the way I've handled my finances, the way I keep my home and my yard, the way I allow my husband to become who he needs to be, that he doesn't have to just be right by my side, making sure Roxanne feels good all the time. All of these great pieces of advice I've built my life on because my father 3 years later got dementia at age 55, and I didn't have that advice anymore. So I've told my kids about that letter, but then I have written, the two that are married, my own letter, because I don't know when something's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And I don't want them getting advice from some vlogger, I want them to get it from me, who they care about and trust. And so I wrote her everything from, the kinds of food to feed your body, to how to support your spouse, to get a skill that can make money yourself, because you don't know if you can always rely on one person's salary or if you're going to need your own, plus the fulfillment that comes from that. to staying away from credit card debt, to making sure you can pay things off, all of those kinds of things. It was just a really wide variety, always serving in the community. Make sure that you are doing something much bigger than just your own home, but that you're making an impact in the community where you live. And I don't think that she'll probably really value it until she's read it year after year.
Yeah.
And especially when I'm gone, then that will become a great bit of history for her. But I was able to say, this is what I've learned. I think you need it. And I hope that it becomes a treasure.
So this was the first letter you wrote. The other two you wrote after the fact, right?
No, I wrote one for my other son who got married. I wrote him a letter.
So I'm curious, was she expecting the letter then?
No, I don't think she was expecting it. It was something I just kind of give him on the side, just quietly before all the hubbub of the wedding and receptions and all of that. I just say, this is something I've been thinking about. Because the one I received was the month before my wedding.
Yeah.
So I was able to read it. And then, like I said, it's now, he's gone. My dad's gone. Yeah. And he was gone much sooner than he should have been.
And your daughter, did she give any comment or feedback as to what she read in that letter?
Not yet. I think that she just kind of said, thanks, Mom, that was so great. But again, you just don't have the maturity to try everything out in it yet.
Agreed. Very much agreed. Okay, so I'm going to share with you something that I experienced.
Okay.
And perhaps you have some comments to it. So I had a similar type interaction with my 3 children as they got married. As my oldest daughter was getting engaged, I said to my future son-in-law and her, I will give you my blessing only if I can meet with you 4 weeks prior to the wedding and have a conversation with you each of these weeks going up. I had 4 topics I wanted to address with them. And the intent was to have, like you did with your letter, just provide some insights and open the dialogue for them to have a conversation about a variety of things. And so I had 4 specific topics that I addressed. I did this with my daughter, my second daughter, when she got married. I did the exact same thing with his proposal. I said, I will give you my blessing only if the 2 of you will meet with me for the 4 weeks prior to the wedding. And then when my son got married, I said the same thing to him. And it was an interesting dynamic. It's one thing to talk to the future son-in-law. It's another thing to talk to the future daughter-in-law. And it was an interesting dynamic. So here are my 4 topics. I'm just curious if you touched on each of these in your letter. The first topic that I have with them is God, family, and religion, or God, faith, and religion. I'm sorry. God, faith, and religion. Have a great conversation with them as to its relevance and how they need to have this conversation for themselves as to how they're going to start their family and whether or not this matters to them and how they're going to kind of address this as a couple. The second topic, so it's the following week, happens to be love languages. And I go into essentially those 5 love languages, and I help them understand that as loving as they are right now and as giddy as they are about their relationship, they really need to come to understand who each is as an individual and what each needs in the relationship. And it's a great conversation that I had with them. The third happens to be finance. We get into basically—
Imagine that.
Imagine that. And the fourth happens to be sex and intimacy. And I hit all these topics, go very deep into them. And the reason why I did this is when I was much younger, I had a friend get married, and before he was to be wed, the pastor basically said, I will not officiate the wedding until you have these meetings with me. And I thought that was fascinating because when I got married, to my recollection, my only conversation that I had with my parents was my mother telling me how to balance a checkbook. That was the only conversation I had. No advice, no suggestions. And I look back and I'm just wondering, how sad is it that I didn't get any advice as to anything as it related to starting this new relationship? And as I've had conversations with many friends, peers, nobody's having conversations. And so it's very, very rare that these things are happening. So what are your thoughts?
Well, Roger, first of all, yay for you. I'm so glad you did that. My second thought is write it down. Make sure you get this written so that it's not just lost, because there are going to be grandchildren that come next that are going to need your wisdom as well. So make sure you create that legacy by getting it written or videoed, whatever you will choose. And the other thought that I have is if you don't feel confident as a parent doing that, get your family premarital counseling.
Yeah.
So we've done that for both of our kids. And I think that it just made them, okay, we're normalized. It's okay that you have issues with the way I eat, and I have issues with the way your mother injects herself or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And then they can talk about that. This doesn't have to say you've got problems. It's a preventative situation where you say, I'm going to prevent some things because we're going to just air it out right now. And then it's not like a forever thing. Sometimes people think, well, if I start therapy, I'll be in it 10 years from now. No, that's not the case. You can do it for a couple of times and then come back if you have an issue. Like you're set, you're good. Let me know if you had a bump in the next year or two, and we'll work through that with you. And it is so nice to have a third party listening to those things. And so I think that's a really wonderful gift you gave your kids. And I think that not only the advice, which is great, but they might forget that, but it's the relationship again.
Yes.
That you've created, I'm a safe place. You come talk to me. I love you both because now you are part of my family. And I'm going to listen to you both. I'm not just going to take my own child's side. That's a real gift.
Oh, to that point, and this is maybe going a step further, I've had, since my children were preteens, I've had a daddy day with them every quarter, once a quarter.
Fun.
And because of that relationship, it let these conversations be a lot easier because they were accustomed to us discussing things. But following their marriage, like you just said, I have had, for lack of a better word, counseling sessions with my children as it relates to their relationship. And I've done it with my son-in-laws. So they've come in confidence to say, here's something that we're struggling with, and talked it through. And to provide for them a safe environment where things can be shared in confidence, and I'm creating a more or less an environment where they feel like they can express themselves and be vulnerable, has been hugely impactful. I've seen, just not to get into details, I've seen them share things that once it's been verbally communicated, it no longer is an issue.
That's exactly right.
Just the mere effort of communicating it no longer is an issue. And I say that because I've watched the relationship afterwards, and it's almost like there was this relief, and it's no longer something that's come up. Now, I could have extended this thing that was brought up by bringing it up continually, but it's over. And I don't need to, they just needed to vent, and giving them that opportunity, that safe environment, has really helped in some of these, in a few of the relationships. So,
Well, what you built was trust.
yes.
You built it for years with your kids, but now you built it with these new family members. And in any business, the employees have to trust the leaders of that business. They have to trust that they have their best interests at heart. And absolutely the same as at home.
Yep.
Your kids can take a little neglect or some crappy dinners because they trust that you're working hard for them and that you do have their best interests at heart. And if they really need help, they raise their hand, you're there.
Yes.
They know that they are the first priority. And so building trust in this dynamic that you have at home and work and becoming aligned as parents are some of the most important things that you can do. If your kids know that they can't go to mom for one thing and dad for another, if they know mom and dad are on the same page, that's going to solve a lot of conflict in the home. Same in your business. You speak with respect about your business partner. You don't share confidences.
Yes.
You model that for your employees, that we are a unified front, and it just gives them so much peace and confidence in you because they may not try to split you, but it's what naturally happens when they go for what they want and they think that there's a weaker side to go to.
Oh yeah, no, that's just parenting. That's
It is.
parenting, and that's
And
also
it's
running a
business.
business.
That's right.
Which manager to go to for this thing? Yes, totally agree. Yeah. All right. So just to finish up something that you commented on, that I should document this, whether write it down or video. It is. I created a
good
video
job.
course, and it's free.
Wonderful.
And I've given it to youth ministers and given it to parents.
Fantastic.
I've done it with people getting married. I just officiated a ring ceremony recently, and I said I wouldn't officiate unless they'd gone through the course, and
Good
they
for you.
did. So yeah,
That's wonderful.
it's something that's recorded. It's for free, and so I'll put that in the episode description. The one thing I would just like to end on, just to kind of wrap all this up, is whether in running an accounting business or working with our clients that are clearly entrepreneurs running their companies, we've got to be sensitive as they bring up things that are distracting them from working on their business, to let them kind of volunteer this information, because oftentimes, like we've been discussing today, there could be spousal or familiar type issues that are being addressed that are distracting the business owner from home. And I felt the conversation today has been very, very helpful to kind of at least bring that up for my listeners. So this has been very good. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of wrap this up. I'm going to talk about a few things. First of all, an offer that we've got, and then wrap it up. And then I'm going to come to you for a closing thought. But as for an offer, one of the things that we want to have for our listeners is in the episode description, you have an app, Trustyy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is our new business. It's called the Trustyy app, and it's for parents who have a teen who struggles. And it can be in any kind of a struggling situation, but I think one of the most important things a parent can be is consistent. And that is what we are struggling with the most as parents in today's crazy paced world. And so this app can do so many things, but it's going to help build the trust between you and your teen. You're going to help them learn how to mature and get the privileges that they want. You're not going to just say no immediately to things like you were saying you've had to really try. Most of us have a hard time remembering what we grounded somebody for or why they can't have what they are asking for. But this app tracks it for us. It remembers everything, and it never gets triggered. It never gets emotional. It never gets tired. And it helps us tie the privileges and the rewards and things that these kids want to their performance. And that's what the world teaches us, that we are rewarded for what we do and the trustworthiness that we show.
Very good. So for my listeners, what you're going to find is in the episode description is the information you need to take advantage of this Trustyy app. Whether it's your family or someone you know, feel free to take advantage of this, especially in raising teenagers. I'm sure this will be a helpful resource that you can take advantage of, and I would encourage you to take advantage of getting that here today in the episode description. Likewise, I brought up that couples course, so I'll definitely put information regarding the couples course in the episode description. Again, it's free. It's something that I've used a lot of times with youth getting married, people who are starting relationships, and it's worked wonders for young adults. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that. And clearly, if you're in a relationship already, whether you're 30 or 60, definitely take advantage of going through the curriculum. I think it'll cause great discussions within your household and something that you probably haven't discussed but should discuss. And I think based on the feedback I've received, a lot of people are really appreciative of just the conversations that came from it. The other thing that I want to include, kind of do is summarize what I've heard today. I was excited about this conversation because I knew that as I've worked with my clients, business owners, entrepreneurs, family comes up quite often. They're very proud of their families. They speak of their spouses and children with delight, but at the same time as they become vulnerable and a little bit more comfortable and feel the safe environment, they'll start to share the distractions that are coming in that are causing them to not be able to work on their business. And I've had wonderful conversations as it relates to, I'm trying to be a great father, a great husband, a great mother, a great wife, and these are the challenges I'm facing. Or in some instances, I've had situations like you've expressed where the parent of the entrepreneur is now going through age-related issues, and you're now having to take care of a parent, and you're having to deal with age as it is, and you're running a business while dealing with a family member, a parent that's perhaps now needing to be in a home and so forth. These challenges are real. They are distractions from the dreams that we're trying to pursue in our business. So I've appreciated the conversation that we had today. It's a little off topic from typically some of the things that I address in the accounting, but definitely appropriate, I feel, just because of the conversations I'm having with my clients. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I really appreciated your insights as it related to getting that stomach of steel. I think we need to recognize that our spouses, when we're coming up with these great ideas to have a business, our spouses are with trust, standing behind us, willing to do most anything. You, in your case, you said, become a marketer. You want me to do what for the business? Well, oftentimes it's those unexpected things that the spouse and the children step into, and they're cleaning the buildings and whatever the case may be. It's an all-in affair. And that was one of the things that I really appreciated from your comments. The other thing that I really valued was the perspective, the insights that you said as to how it relates to the children and how we can be there for them. I enjoyed that part of the conversation. I think that that's something that we always need to reflect on, is how can we be more present for the people that matter in our lives? And sometimes business distracts us from those things. Business isn't necessarily the end, it's the means to an end. We're trying to use this business to achieve some other goals, and we just don't want to lose track of those goals and neglect them as well. And people matter. You know, these people need our attention. They need to know they're relevant. So loved our conversation today. Roxanne, what thoughts would you have as a closing thought?
You know, I think the last thing that I'd mention is the idea of boundaries. So when you work together in a business, you find that you're doing shop talk all the time. And I heard about a couple of lawyers, a husband-wife team that worked together, and they had a very strict rule. At 5:30, nothing about work was mentioned. And if someone brought something up, the spouse would look at him like, "Are you kidding me? Did you just bring up work just now?" And they did that because it would bleed into everything. And you have to do whatever it takes to make sure that that doesn't happen. So even for my spouse and I, when we go on date nights, I will sometimes bring those little icebreaker conversation cards and say, this
Yes.
is what we're talking about. Also, because we need some new stories. We're talking about the same people at work, the same people at home, the same issues. I'd like to hear a new story. We've been married for 32 years, and I think I know all the ones about you beating up the bully and da-da-da-da. Like, let's get some fresh stuff here.
I
What
love
do you
this.
say?
This is great. The icebreaker cards are amazing.
They are, because they're bringing you ideas like those cute ideas of if you had an hour to spend with anybody who's ever lived on the earth, who would it be and why? What questions would you ask?
Yeah.
I mean, that just creates a great dinner conversation, and it's a rest for your mind, because your entrepreneurial mind cannot keep going all the time. It needs that rest to get creative again.
Yes.
So I would say that that's probably one of the things I would do, is not only create the boundaries for you and your spouse, but do it so that your children don't constantly have to hear about what's going on at work, that they're hearing your news stories, that they're feeling that the focus is on them, that you're 100% focused on them and their stories.
I love it. And the questions, the icebreakers, my son has those cards and uses them, loves them, because it gets people to have conversations about things that they're not even considering. It breaks that conversational redundancy that's a rhythm in all of our lives. We tell the same stories all the time. So I love that. That was an excellent point in the boundaries. Very, very well said. I appreciate that. So everyone, I really enjoyed our conversation today. I appreciate Roxanne coming on the show. I appreciated the insights that we were able to more or less address here. And I would consider this a first, definitely not a marketing, pricing, sales type of discussion, but it clearly goes into that realm of mental health. What are those things that we're dealing with as we're running our businesses that we need to be aware of? And clearly our families matter. And that's both extended families and the immediate household. So I hope this has been an insightful conversation for you to listen to. I'm hoping that from this, you actually got some ideas of things that you can be doing differently and better, especially in your own homes, but also as you're having conversations with your clients as they bring up challenges and struggles that they may be facing as they're running their business. In addition to all this, let me just end with a few thoughts. First of all, the idea of the free resources that we have here at Universal Accounting Center. We've got a number of free resources, one of which is that couples course that I alluded to. You can go to universalaccounting.com and in the navigation find those free resources, and I encourage you to take advantage of those. The other thing that I'd like to mention is GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference that we put on for the owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. We invite you to register and attend, joining us each and every May so that you can actually spend some time working on your business, learning from the experts from the stage, visiting with your peers, and finding out what kind of collaborations you can do there. And most importantly, you also get to meet us here at Universal Accounting Center, the team that's enabling you to be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal Accounting. So join us, register, and we look forward to seeing you at GrowCon. The other thing I want to point out is if you have any information that you would like to discuss or implement in your business, feel free to reach out to us at Universal Accounting. You can contact us by going to universalaccountingschool.com, or you can actually give us a phone call at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is Universal. Take care, have a great day, and be safe out there.